Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are. Thanks for joining the second of today's live streams, where we get to very nicely look at Capture One 16.7, which was launched yesterday. So we're hot off the press, and we've got a bunch of new features to show you. So those of you on YouTube, welcome. Thanks for joining. If you want to ask a question, you're very welcome to put that in the chat, and then I will attempt to see those as they fly by. There are rather a lot of you today. If you're in our live streaming room, we've also got Helen and Victor helping us out with questions as well. So if you're in that room and you want to ask a question, it's much easier if you put that in the Q&A tab as opposed to the chat. Just helps us keep it separate, and it might get missed if it's in the chat. If you see your chat message disappear, then it's probably just been sent over to the Q&A window by myself or Helen or Victor. If you want to give yourself a bit more space, then hit the little down arrow on the right hand side and you'll be able to see a bit more of Capture One on screen. All right, enough introductions. Let's go straight to the good stuff. So what we're going to be looking at today are these new features and functionality. So we've got Retouch Additions, a new feature called Combine Masks, which is pretty exciting, contact sheets, close masking, which is an addition to the people masking functionality, hue, saturation, lightness reads out, PSB support as well for new features, and for enhancements, a change to the way we handle Canon manufacturer profiles, which actually started in 16.6, sorry, and has been further enhanced in 16.7, so more on that later. And then finally, some really nice improvements to Fujifilm when tethered. So we'll take a look at those with a connected Fujifilm camera we have here as well. So lots of stuff going on. So let's get to it. So let's bring up Capture One on screen. The first thing we're going to look at are the additions to the Retouch tab, or additional tools, I should say. So first of all, a slight change in that we've got a new tool here, Retouch Face Selector. So that's if you're dealing with groups, then you'll see more than one face here, of course, so you can decide whether you want to retouch on an individual or a group basis, and you can see our detected faces, of course. And now we've got the Retouch Face Skin tool as a separate one, Retouch Teeth and Retouch Eyes. So of course you can customize them as you wish, put them into different tool tabs and so on. So they are broken up into their individual tasks. So what's changed or what's new? So first of all, let's look at Retouch Eyes. This is a really nice addition. Let's hide the browser for a second. So Retouch Eyes, you've got a control for iris and the sclera. So if we drag our iris slider to the right, you'll pretty much see what happens. So natural color becomes richer, but importantly, we retain the highlights and the shadows. If we drag the sclera across, that will come brighter. Also, the yellowness will disappear and reduce the redness of the blood vessels. It doesn't take the blood vessels away, but their prominence is much reduced. So if we option click on our reset, you can see before and after. I've probably pushed it a bit harder than we normally would, but you can see the idea. Now, a nice addition, left and right over here, this allows you to apply an offset. So it means if there's an imbalance in both of the eyes, you can say, okay, let's go to the right eye and give that a little bit more, a little bit less, or whatever, so that you get a nice balance. And left and right is as you're looking at on the screen, not, if you like, the eyes on the person itself. So this one is the left and this one is the right, like so. But super nice, gives a really nice change. Now, of course, you can copy and apply this over to other images, and important to point out, this does not require the use of masking. You don't have to specify where the eyes are. We know where they are already, so you don't have to create your own masks and layers. Therefore, if we want to copy that over, so if I wanted to just drop that across, I could shift click on my little copy and apply arrow over here on the right hand side, and then that would copy those changes over onto this one as well. But no masking required. I do see a question there. When will there be a retouch layer or a retouch mask? I don't know. I'm not sure if we would even implement that, to be honest. The purpose of doing it this way is to first avoid the need of masking so that you can easily copy and apply between images, do a batch, and so on and so forth. I do understand the request, but right now we're trying to make this as easy and as simple to use as possible, and also to work into these batch operations. So that's David, who just asked a similar question. That's also that reason as well. So that's retouch eyes, first of all. Retouch teeth, which works exceptionally well. So let's go to this one first of all. And again, no masking required. So all we need to do is drag our slider. So brightness will brighten the area of the teeth, and then desaturation will take out any discoloration that there is as well. But what I really like about this is that we get a really nice natural look. So you'll see we've still got the contrast, the highlights showing on the teeth. So the highlights aren't getting destroyed. It's not giving you a nasty, just bright, fake Hollywood smile. It just works in a really, really nice natural way. Excuse me. Okay, and then of course copy paste if I wanted to go to another image. So let's copy over to this one. Let's do that before. Hold down my shift key, shift click, and then copy it over like so. Now that's just one image, but of course there could be multiple images as well. Finishing off with this one, we've also extended the range of where the skin retouching happens. So the retouch face skin, by default now on new images, you're going to see that this checkbox over here, include neck area, is going to be checked on by default. So that means if we do any blemish removal or even skin or something like that, it will also include the neck area. So if I just reset this for a second, so as I drag the blemish removal slider up, you can see that happen. And that's also going on in the neck area as well. So if I do a before and after, then you can see those changes. If you've already retouched some images, we won't turn this checkbox on, but for all new images that you import or shoot tethered, that will be turned on by default. Great question from Brad. Will all the settings be automatically applied to a primary variant when tethered? Yes. So super important. So if you're shooting headshots or portraits or something like that, a really nice use of this, of course, is to apply it immediately. So when you're taking your headshots and portraits, as soon as they pop up on screen, it's going to have any of those retouch features applied. So your portrait sitter is going to be imbued with confidence that they look even more fantastic than they do with all your great lighting, of course, that it will be applied as you shoot tethered. Now, depending on the performance of your machine, might take slightly longer to present the final image on screen, but it's generally pretty quick anyway. So yes, great addition to those retouch tools. Really great if you're shooting tethered as well. If you hadn't missed it, down here you've got this little blemish protection. Let's just nip back to the eyes picture for a second. If you haven't updated in a while, this kind of snuck in on a dot release. Essentially what the algorithm is doing on blemish protection is looking out for blemishes and keeping them. But if you feel, okay, there's a blemish that I would like to keep, then what you can do is simply grab this protection brush. Oh, I'd already done one on this image you see, and mark it. And then that way, when you're dragging the slider, I'll just hide the mask, it means the algorithm will just ignore it anyway. But the algorithm is designed to try to protect beauty marks, those kinds of things. But like any sort of, AI learning model, it's not necessarily going to be 100% accurate. So having the blemish protection just means you can quickly mark any areas. There was another question which popped up. Is this a beta release? I saw, no, it's not a beta release. It was released yesterday in its full entirety. Okay, quick pause for any questions. What happens with pictures retouched with the previous version of the retouch faces? Good question. So any of your sliders here will just remain the same. We won't turn on include neck area, that will be off. And the retouch eyes and retouch teeth will be at 0. So, but it will retain any of the retouch skin that we've done before. So you'll see just on this particular image, let's just hide the browser. Looks pretty good, eh? If we do a quick before and after, you can see before and after, and the retouching is doing a super nice job. Great. Now, also, just to finish off this, don't forget you can save this as a style. So any of your, adjustments that you've got going on here. So let's just throw in a bit of that. I can save this as a custom preset. I can decide what I want to have as part of this preset. Save that. Call this retouch set. And then any other image that we go to, let's just go back to teeth for a second. Let's just bring this one up. If I retouch all the various different tools down here, I can simply bring this up, click on it, and then it applies the retouching like so. And of course, you could do that on a batch of images as well, or incorporate that into a style, which could include a bunch of other adjustments. So Brad, who is shooting tethered, there's nothing to stop you taking a shot, throwing a style on it, which does your color grading, retouching, and so on, and then get back to shooting. Okay. Very nice Retouch Additions. Let's go now. I think we're okay for questions. Yes, thank you, Helen and Victor. And go back and look at combine masks over here. By the way, I see a few questions like, when are we going to have such and such? You can go to capture1.co/improve and put your suggestions in there. And it's always reviewed by our product managers on a regular basis, so they will decide if it makes sense to implement a requested feature, but you can put it at capture1.co/improve. All right, combining masks. So what is the limit, or what was, I should say, the limitation of masks in the past? So we have a very powerful masks set in Capture One. We can draw them by hand, we can use AI, we can use color ranges, luminosity ranges, etc., etc. But they are kind of standalone, so we might often hit some limitations. So to give you an example, if we do a linear gradient on this image, I can hold my option key to change the fall off. So we've got a mask like this. Let's say I want to bring back some nice detail in the sky, so I could do that. But now, unfortunately, my biker has suffered a darkness because it's now included in that as well. Now, previously, we did have one kind of intersecting mask, which was Luma range. So that used to live down here in the layers tool, but now we've got this new combined mask feature. So the kind of early type of an intersecting mask was to intersect with the Luma range. So if I create that mask and then say I only want the bright stuff, I've sort of created an intersecting mask which retains its ability to be dynamic, so I can still move this around. And if we look at our grayscale mask, you can see exactly what's going on. But it's not super perfect because I've still got, a few little bright bits here and there. I've actually got my ground coming in there, which I don't really want. So should I try to do this? I can't really squeeze that down. So yeah, it becomes, if you like, a little bit of a compromise. But it's dynamic in that I can always go back and tweak my gradient like so. Now, if I wanted to clean this up, I'd have to rasterize it, which means kind of applying the mask as it is right now and go ahead and erase some of these little bits and so on, clean up my ground, etc. So that's the only kind of intersecting mask that we had up in to this point of Capture One. But now, of course, we've got this exciting change of being able to add, subtract, and intersect with a whole bunch of other stuff. So what I could do now, let's just take that away. We've got our linear gradient like so. And what I can do is go ahead and say intersect with the background and say create mask. And now what I have is this. So if we look at our grayscale mask once more, you can see it's just now cutting around on the background like so. And I don't have any of the sort of issues there. It's done a nice job of finding the background. And now I can go ahead and grab my sky quite nicely and make that so much better. But of course, it's infinitely variable. I can always go back and tweak it and adjust it and so on, add more combined mask operations if I wish. So up until this point of Capture One, you had one kind of intersecting mask, which was Luma range, but now you've got a whole bunch of other stuff. So what I'm going to do now is run through a bunch of examples. This is not an exhaustive list. It's almost infinite what you can do, but this hopefully serves as a little bit of inspiration on the potential with adding, subtracting, and combining masks. Oh, just to give you another quick example here, let's do almost an identical thing. So I'm going to have a new layer. We're going to put in our gradient like so. That's going to give us this mask. We're going to say intersect with my background, create mask like so, and now we've got this. But you see there's a little error like so, just in the fin or tail plane, don't know. So what I could do now additionally is say subtract, AI select, create mask, and then I'm going to do that. And then now I've subtracted that annoyance. But if I go back to my Luma, then I can still go ahead and adjust this quite nicely. And I've got a really nice chop out around the aircraft like so. So similar to what we did before, but just adding the new stuff. That's a good question. Is this new combined stuff mask heavy for a computer? Combined mask stuff heavy? Not really, to be honest. I mean, I'm lucky. This is a pretty powerful laptop, but I've used this on an older M1 Max and it's working pretty nice. On the next example, I'll show you how nice the performance is actually and how quickly the calculations are happening. Oops, wrong shortcut key. Wrong shortcut key again. Let's try that. Okay, that's better. So what I meant to do was that. There we go. Let's show you this one. Not that one. Let's go here. So we've got a image with no layers at all. So what we're going to do is add a nice radial mask. Like so. We're going to make that a little bit softer. But let's say we don't want this to affect our subject at all. So we want to do something like this. We want to darken our background down a little bit, but we don't want it to affect the front. So what we can do once more is then say intersect with the background or subject. Let's see, create mask like so. And then now if I do Option M, like so, you can see where the radial mask is, like so, and we can move it around very nicely at super high speed, no juddering or anything like that, very nicely. So now, of course, what happens, you can see where the mask is. I can make my adjustments like so, move it around where I want to. I can still adjust my radial mask, so everything is now infinitely flexible, which is super nice. And more importantly is the ability to copy and paste this. So if I bring up a couple of other random images, so let's go, so in the same set, but obviously Rebecca is moving around, so the subject is moving and so forth. But if I say copy and apply like so, then what it's going to do is apply those stack of masks, if you like. Sorry, let's open one of those up, over to a different image. So now if we go here, turn on my mask, you can see we've got the background intersecting with the radial, and I can still move it around like so. So even if your subject is jumping around and you're using different images, as long as you've got that dynamic part of the mask, it will copy and apply really nicely. Such an infinite masking feature. It really is. I'm actually, in some ways, struggled to come up with what I should show, because there's almost an infinite number of things you can do, and this again is not an exhaustive list. So shout out to Alex Fleming, our product manager, who also came up with a whole bunch of these examples as well, because it's almost difficult to think, you know, where do I stop? Could I combine two radial masks? I saw someone. I'm going to combine a radial and a linear shortly, so there's no reason why you couldn't combine two radials as well. What's next? Yeah, so on that subject, can we add two linears? Yes. So if I go ahead and do a linear mask here as an example, let's just darken that down a bit, add some clarity as an example. I can now go into the add operation and say just add another linear, and then draw another one in. Sorry, add linear, and say create mask, draw another one, and then now I've got my two linears which I can tweak and play around with. But just be aware, in this kind of situation they are going to share the same adjustments, but you can have two, and this is useful because we have the limitation, of course, of 16 layers in the layers tool itself, but these do not count to your 16 layer limit. So this is one layer with its combined mask, sub-mask, whatever you want to call them, potato, etc. But this is one layer out of your allocation of 16. Okay, two linears. What about subtracting? So we've got an entire person here. So let's mask the subject. So we've got our subject mask. By the way, if you want a bit of a shortcut and you don't want to navigate down to the combine mask, you can right click and say subject people. When you go into the people mode, it will bring up the people options, and I can say, well, let's get rid of, I don't know, let's do the hair. So now that will subtract the hair from the mask like so. New feature, mask an entire person. So let's mask our person again. Right click, subtract people. We've got a new option here, which is close. So if I say do that, then it will subtract the close like so. Subtract, add, pretty easy concepts to kind of get hold of, I would think. Mask an entire person again, subject, right click, subtract, except for, whoops, mask an entire person, bit quick on the clicks there, subtract people. So we could say we don't want the body skin, face skin, lips and hair and eyebrows, for example. And then that will give us this. So yeah, you get the idea. It's pretty simple to add, subtract all these various different masks. Okay, let's combine a radial and a linear. Why not? Let's go here. Right, and this will probably help Ibari with your question. So add, subtract, I think, is pretty obvious. Intersect is where the masks are overlapping, basically. So let's bring up this image and take that away. And let's go to the one which doesn't have the adjustment on. And I'm going to draw, first of all, a radial, like so. Let's spin that a little bit. Something like this. So I've got my radial, and let's say I want to darken down the background, but again, I don't want it to affect the front, but I'd like it to have a linear fall off as an example. So if I intersect with a linear gradient, I can then draw a linear gradient up here, which will give me, whoops, did it in the wrong place, sorry. let's do that again. I want to subtract, sorry, a linear gradient, create mask, draw this up like so. So now I'm subtracting my linear gradient away from that radial, which gives me that kind of thing. So now I've got this sort of affair going on, which gives me this, if you like, a mask around the top, like a little bit of a rainbow halo thing. And I can always go back and play with the radial and change that, or go back and play with the linear and so forth. But beyond that, what if I wanted to make sure it doesn't affect my subject? I could right click, intersect with the subject or the background. Let me see if I get this. Oh, wrong one. Right click, intersect. You can see I'm still learning myself. Background, there we go. And then now if I'm moving my radial around like so, then it's avoiding my subject like so, which is pretty cool as well. So you can keep, piling up on those different masks and so on and so forth. Now, just because you have a shiny new tool doesn't mean you should go ahead and use it on every single image. You could argue, David, this might have been quicker to just do some dodging and burning, which it could have. Or you could do a dodge and burn and then subtract the subject to make sure that if you did snag any of the subject, it would then be taken away. So there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, as we delightfully say. So just, I think you'll settle into your own workflow of what makes sense for you. Cool. This is a fun one. Last example, because we could go on forever. And this is the one I forgot how to do this morning, which was a bit embarrassing. So if I make a new layer and then intersect with the subject and grab a brush, let's see if this works. And then I'll go back over it again. Yeah, then we can only brush within the subject area like so. So let's do that again. So new adjustment layer. So I've got a new layer with nothing on it. Right click, intersect with my subject. And now if I grab myself a brush, when I start brushing on the image, then I'll only brush on the subject like so, as you can see. So what it means, if I wanted to have like a little bit of modeling kind of thing just on one area, then I could burn, but with the protection of only being on my subject, as an example. Yeah. So again, lots of different ways you can use this. It does take you a little bit of time to get your head around it. Took me a bit of time to get my head around it, but it's slowly sinking into this mushy old brain. Okay, let me just check for questions. Peter said, why was this intersect and not subtract? Look, as I said before, to get to the end result, you can sometimes use different operations, whether you're starting with an empty layer, a filled layer, a radial, linear. Quite often, whether you're adding, subtracting, intersecting, you get to the same result. So it doesn't matter so much. I think the important thing is just understanding the logic of how you get to be from A to B. Oh, that's a nice question, Steve. The last one you demonstrated, would that be dynamic from image to image? Yes, because, hang on, let's look at the mask. So let's see, because it is a subject mask, but brushed on. So I'm going to copy that and then bring up a different one. Let's just reset that and say apply. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so sort of, because what you'll get is like so. Let's bring up the other one where I brushed it on. So you see it's kind of dynamic in a way, but because obviously Rebecca has shifted her position, it's going to be a little bit different. But to some extent it is. But if you imagine where that brush marks are without the intersect, when it's dropped onto the next image, if you imagine where I've brushed, the brushing is in the same place, but where it intersects with the subject is going to be slightly different. But if your model is generally in similar positions, I mean, it works, to be fair, but there's nothing to stop you then going to each image and just doing a little quick tweak if you wanted to. So yes. Cool. All right. As I said, we could go on and on for that, so let's not before we run out of time and we can't speak about everything else. Close mask. So this is a new addition in the people masking. So if I go ahead and say, let's mask the close, let's do two at the same time. Let's turn off the mask for a second. Get rid of that close mask from earlier. So if we say close and create mask, this will happen on both of them, and there's our close mask. Before you ask, we cannot identify jacket, t-shirt, shoes, pants, socks, or whatever. It is just whatever we detect on the model itself, or if it's flat lay, doesn't have to have a person in there. If clothes are detected, then they are masked like so. But you can see it does a pretty nice job. It's missed out his hand over here and a little bit of the skin over there, and then around here, pretty nice. And what this can be good for, I've found, is if, certainly in this situation, if you want to sharpen up the garments a little bit, but you don't want to sharpen up the subject because they don't really need it, then we can throw a little bit of extra sharpening on here like so, and that's not affecting our face skin tones and so forth. So that's an addition to the people masking option. No questions on that, I don't think. Indirect question from Philippe, but I'll take it, Philip. How often do you guys throw new data at your models or AI models in order to refine AI selection? Quite regularly, not necessarily throwing new data, but tweaking how they respond and so forth. I think subject and background masking have had a number of tweaks. Face detection, which we use for snap to eye, and a number of other things has been tweaked a number of times. We don't necessarily shout about it, but there's been a number of, stages of refinement and improvement and so on. Yeah, so there's like the initial part, and then beyond that, obviously, as we go through, we can see where it slips up, where it's better, where it's not, and then tweak it and so forth. Okay, can you mask by cloth color? You can mask by color using the color editor and convert that to a mask, but that's not something you can build into that people masking. Okay, let's move on and talk about contact sheets. What are we going to use for that? We are going to use these. So let's select a bunch of images, and I'm going to right click and say export to contact sheet. This is useful if you want to send out JPEGs and PDF of your images. If we tap on this, it's going to take a few seconds, but we can already go ahead and start filling in our dimensions. So let's go for a, I can't type. Let's go for a 2560 by 1440 2K affair. And we're going to have, let's go for 5 images across and 3 images down. And then you can see how they look. If you want the name, you can pop that on. Changing the background color just by tapping these buttons here. And then other options, which is very easy to figure out by changing the margins between the images and all that kind of stuff. Up here, you've got your export button. You can have JPEG or PDF. So let's go for PDF, put that on my desktop. And then what you will see is very quickly desktop, our PDF like so with our 2 pages and our contact sheet. That's it. Very simple and straightforward. as I said, you can build out PDFs and JPEGs as well, whatever you prefer. If you do JPEG and it's a couple of pages, it will zip it up into one file, which makes it easier to distribute as well. Now, if you're looking for something a bit more feature rich, don't forget you've got the ability to share online. Many of you don't know this exists, but you can share a whole gallery of images online, and your collaborator can even add star ratings, color tags, and comments. So if you need something for, you know, better collaboration as opposed to a simple contact sheet, then do investigate the share online option up here. Does it reduce the size for emailing photos? How big was that PDF? I didn't even look. 3 megabytes, so that's fairly small, yes. And the JPEG would be even smaller as well. Okay, next, HSL readouts. So if we go to View, Readout Format, you've got RGB, which is traditionally what we had, red, green, and blue at the top. View, Readout Format, HSL, which has been added, and Lab has always been there. But if we do HSL, then we get our hue, saturation, and lightness values as well. PSB support. Let's go for, where's my PSB picture? Oh, it's gone. Where is my PSB picture? There it is. PSB files. So if you don't know what a PSB is, it's Photoshop Big. So an extension over PSD, the normal Photoshop format. So at a certain point, PSD taps out. I can't remember if it's 2 gig or 4 gig off the top of my head. But once you hit that limit, then you're into PSB territory. But PSB have not been able to be read by Capture One up until this point. So now, just to prove it, there is a PSB file and it is sitting happily in Capture One. All right, Matthias says, PSB, yes, finally, 4 gigabytes, thank you. I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 4, but yes, now you can happily store those in your Capture One sessions and catalogs. Let's have a look. Just nipping back briefly to Matt's question. I'm testing out a linear gradient, but my subjects aren't being completely found by the system. Can I paint what I want mask for my subject and still use the background gradient? I think probably going back to my other example, where are we? Combine masks. So I don't know if you remember on this one, there was a little kind of boo-boo just on the top here. So if I go back to my layers tool and turn on my mask, it was just when we did the intersect with the background, it missed a bit of that. So then I just subtracted an AI select. So I'd say if you do a subject or background intersect and there's a little chunk missing, I would say use that AI subtract or AI add if it's the opposite to put that back in as well. So remember, you can add additional things like that, or probably just use a basic eraser. But I would imagine that AI select would be the fastest way to do it. Let's see, just checking other questions. Does Capture One have an option for the target size in the contact sheet? Not currently, no. Just what I showed you is the current implementation of the contact sheet. But as I said, captureone.co/improve. Put your requests in there for new additions and so forth. Same answer to you as well, Andreas. Okay. Alexander said, the last time I used the online sharing, it expired after 1 day. Is that normal? So depending on your version of Capture One, if you're running Capture One Pro, then you can share one collection and it lasts for 24 hours. If you are running Capture One Studio, then it goes up to 60 days. But if you're running Pro and you don't have a use for Studio, you can buy a Capture One Live add-on, or you can buy our all-in-one package, which gives you access to Pro, Studio, and some of our cloud features, for example, like saving your settings in the cloud as well. But yes, multiple collections, 30 days on the all-in-one product, 60 days on Capture One Studio. Okay, moving back. What do we got? Oh, Fujifilm improvements. Okay, so I'm going to open up a different session. So let's go to this one. I've got a camera here to my right, so let's turn this guy on. Oops, I left it on. Let's hope the battery didn't drain. No, it didn't. Phew, that would have been embarrassing. Let's go over here and find the camera. Okay, I'm going to take a picture, see what comes up. Whoops, I'd left it on multi-shot mode, so we're going to get 20 images. So that was for later in the demo, but fortunately, because I have this ability to change it in Capture One, I can do it straight away. Right, hold that thought. Let's delete that and take another capture. There we go. Okay, so let's go into live view. So this is live view. If you don't believe me, I'm going to wave my hand in front. Woo, there we go. There's live view. Now we've got a new cursor tool up here. Now currently just for Fujifilm. I'll talk about other cameras in a minute, so hold fire on your questions. But what this cursor tool does is allow you to tap on the image and then the camera will snap to that particular focus point, which is pretty nice. So just one click anywhere in the image, and then of course, because there's mirrorless camera, it can focus anywhere, then it will just snap to that particular point. So that's very nice if you're shooting product, tabletop, and so forth. Don't forget you've also got the focus controls here for coarse, medium, and light if you want to jog the autofocus by itself, but otherwise tap to focus is really nice. Certainly good if your camera is inaccessible or if it's up high shooting overhead and you can't get to the camera, then this is really nice. I need my other notes. Crap, where did I put those? So this is available for pretty much any Fujifilm camera that should shoot tethered. Says he looking around. I'm going to say the dog ate my notes. Ah, here we go. Yeah, this should be expected to work on any Fujifilm camera that is tethering. Additionally, for Fujifilm, we will also respect in-camera crop. So this started with the GFX 100 RF, now extended to the XE5, the XH2, the XM5, the XT5, the XT50, and the X100V. So if you set an in-camera crop when you import into Capture One or shoot tethered, that will be respected by the crop tool, but you could also reverse it. So yeah, super nice feature if you're shooting tethered. Now, before you all ask, what about Canon, Nikon, so on? We are looking at other manufacturers. Unfortunately, they all implement this in a different way, so it will take us a bit of time, but we are looking at other manufacturers as well. Now, also, an addition for Fujifilm, which was my little mistake earlier, we can also change the drive mode. And you may or may not know this, I don't know, but we can go to all the various different drive modes, and what is nice, we can pick the pixel shift mode as well. And what pixel shift does is actually move the sensor in tiny increments to give you either real color, I'll explain more on that in a second, or an enhanced larger file size. So now we're on pixel shift, so if I trigger it now, what's going to happen, I'm going to sit really still so I don't vibrate the camera. It's going to shoot 4 images where it moves the sensor by 1 pixel at a time, and then it will shoot 16 where it moves the sensor by half a pixel at a time. And what this means is, because of the colored mosaic on the sensor, in this case an X-trans, it's recording the red, green and blue values for each pixel site on the image. And when it's doing the half movement, we're actually, excuse me, increasing our resolution by 4 times, I think. Now Fujifilm, what they've also done is if I right click, I can say open with Pixel Shift Combiner. So if I do that, it will open up the Pixel Shift Combiner and combine them in Capture One. So this is a version which I don't think is available yet, and you see it's got a little install Capture One plugin. So now it's stitching those 20 shots together, and it will return a DNG back into Capture One. So those of you who are interested in doing this, if you're on the compatible Fujifilm cameras, then you can do so. So they might look identical, but looky look, if we zoom into 100%, zoom in, let's hide the browser and the tools, you can see I've got 4 times the resolution on the left hand side. Now this is not a new technology. It's been around in early days when I was a much younger person and I worked for a Danish company called Imacon. They inherited another Danish company called Color Crisp, which developed this multi-shot technology of moving the sensor. Just be aware if something is moving, of course it doesn't work. You can't shoot it on a wobbly wooden floor on an ancient tripod. You need to have a really stable setup so you're not disappointed. I'll also tell you that the multi-shot images, you can also dollop in quite a bit of extra retouching and they can take it. And in fact, I'd say you need to sharpen them a little bit more than what you would. But yeah, look at that. Loads of detail, really super impressive. Great for still life, food, if it's not moving, architecture, interiors, that kind of stuff as well. And you'll see in the right click, open with. What's nice with the way they've implemented this, you don't have to select all 20 images. You can just pick one and it will go and find the others, which is pretty cool. So high resolution, it will use those 16 captures to give you that bigger resolution file. The real color, and it's called real color because we're not doing any guesswork on what the red, green and blue channels should be. It's using the color information from each pixel as it moves around. But you don't get a bigger resolution, you just get, in theory, more accurate color, which can be really good if that's, you know, important to you on your still life subjects. So the drive mode setting, that's on the XT5, the GFX 100 RF, the 100-2, the 100S2, the XH2 and S, XS20 and the XM5. XT5, it's a physical dial, so Capture One will just show you what's going on here, but you won't be able to change it. That's it, I think. Oh no, one last thing. Canon lens profiles. So let's just go back to my session for a moment and find a Canon file. Let's go back to eyes and look in the shape tool and look at lens correction like so. So what you'll see now, or just to go step back a little bit, in Capture One 16.6 we added manufacturer lens profiles for the EOS R1 and the R5, and what this means is that there's enough data in the lens at manufacture by Canon that we can use that data to do the lens corrections. So we don't have to physically have the copy of the lens in Copenhagen and do all the captures and tests to then build the lens profile. This is much faster. And it means if Canon were to introduce a brand new lens tomorrow, by nature, it's immediately supported in Capture One, which is great. A little bit different in 16.7 is that any EOS cameras with RF mount will also have the manufacturer profile option. However, it's slightly different that these other cameras, we won't pick that by default. We'll attempt to pick our own profile. But if you want to go ahead and switch to manufacturer profile and compare the two, then you're welcome to do so. Whether one is better than the other is probably up for debate. In theory, the Canon one is, you know, working on actual lens data, so potentially it might be better, but it's probably tiny amounts which us humans wouldn't be able to have any way of detecting a finite difference. But it's there, and it just means that now any RF mount camera, you've got instant access to lens profiles, which is great. Now that was it. So yes, it was a little bit like one more thing, but it was totally unintentional. But even though it might sound small, that's a pretty big thing, because when new lenses come out, we don't necessarily have the ability to get them straight away. It takes quite some time to profile them. This way, it's just instantly in Capture One, which has been the same for quite a few other manufacturers as well. So now it's nice that it happens with Canon. Okay, last few questions. Ryan says, why does it take so long to get lens profiles for Sony lenses? I'm pretty sure Sony is manufacturer profile as well. Let me have a look. Yeah, so there you go. This is a Sony camera manufacturer profile. Don't think, Ryan, that this is, oh, this is a lesser option. It really isn't. We have our own way of profiling lenses, and of course the manufacturers have their own way, but there's lots of data in the lens that we can use. So if you can't see a specific profile in there, it really doesn't matter, because the manufacturer profile is there and it's doing a great job. So same goes for any other manufacturer that we support with manufacturer profiles. Leica is one, I think, Panasonic, just to throw a weird one out there, Nikon, I believe, as well. It's fine, so don't think it's a lesser alternative. Okay. Jorge, will you ever allow recording on the computer and the camera card? Actually for quite a long time now, Jorge. It really has been there for quite a time. Hang on, where's the camera? Now it might be depending a little bit on the camera model, but you can see here, save to SD card, RAW and JPEG, JPEG only, off, and so forth. Same goes for Canon, same goes for Nikon as well. So Jorge, that's been there for a very long time, but if you give an indication what your camera is, we can take a look. But it's also on Sony as well, so it is there. There's also some new camera support. Those of you who've had iPhone 17s, they've also got a nice camera profile as well, and a whole slew of other cameras have been supported too. All right, enough waffle from me. Remember to close if you have suggestions for Capture One. That's captureone.co/improve, and put your stuff in there. And then that way our product managers who review it regularly know what you're after. That's it. So thanks for joining me today. If you want to watch it again, which I'm sure you do, then you can head over to the YouTube channel, Capture One's YouTube channel, very easy to find. And we've been streaming there as well, so it'll be instantly available on YouTube if you head over there in a second. So thanks very much for joining me today. Enjoy the weekend when it comes to you, and see you all soon. Take care.